Liza, and thanks to the Brennan Center. We have a big subject and a short time period and a bunch of very smart people, so I want to jump right into it. I thought I would pose a question for each panelist and then let them respond and see where we go. Bart, maybe I'll start with you. The Washington Post last month had a story that the head of the CIA Counterterrorism Center was being reassigned and replaced. But they declined to name him because they said he's undercover, and so he wasn't going to be identified by name. Shortly after, the online publication Gawker went ahead and named him. So my question for you is, did the Washington Post submit to the seduction of secrecy, as Fritz called it, or did it exercise prudent judgment? What are the questions that an editor should ask in a situation like that? And what should a member of the public think when they see one outlet withholding information only to have it revealed by another?
Okay, so I spent a big chunk of a career at the Post, but I'm not on staff now, wasn't involved, and don't speak for them, just to make that clear. So I don't know the circumstances exactly. Some considerations you would want them to entertain would be, number one, there are not many subjects on which the law explicitly forbids publication, but one of them is the identity of clandestine officers of the United States. And so if this gentleman had recently been or was slated to be stationed clandestinely overseas, that would have been a legal bar of publication. I don't think that's the case here.
That we are living in an age of rampant secrecy to be congenial. Let me try to challenge that and to ask Carrie Cordero. Carrie Cordero, who is a law professor at Georgetown Law School, former Justice Department official. What if we are actually living in an age of unprecedented openness? I posed the question in all seriousness. I remember 20 years ago, during budget season, I used to go over to the Pentagon to get the budget documents. You know, I had to take the metro. I had to get into the building. Since I didn't have a press credential, I needed a building pass. In order to get a building pass, I had to be fingerprinted and have a national agency check, basically the equivalent of getting a secret clearance. And then eventually I would get this stack of budget documents and take them back to the office and wade through them page by page. Today, 20 years later, not only I, but anyone can get those budget documents instantly the moment they're released. And I think a credible argument can be made that more government information is more easily available to more people than ever before. Fritz has written, and I think just said a moment ago, that the traditional role of the press is to disseminate news, but that under prevailing conditions of secrecy, reporters have to do more than that. They have to discover new information and present it to the public. And this may not be what he was thinking of, but it made me think of the relatively new practice that has become commonplace, in which when news stories are based on official documents, it is increasingly the practice to make those documents publicly available online. And that is something that I think the Times has pioneered, and that you have pioneered, or at least helped to reinforce. And I wonder if you would reflect on that practice and how it has emerged and how it is, how it is performed.
Sure. Well, it's certainly something that would not be possible without sort of the internet and PDFs and the ability to post things very easily, and the creation of the document cloud service as sort of a public good where reporters can upload and then find and share primary documents has been a tremendous boon to my own reporting and probably countless other reporters as well.
Lucy, several years ago, you made a statement which has been etched in countless law review articles and all other sorts of publications, to the effect that the age of subpoenas against newspaper reporters was drawing to a close, not because the government didn't want to know the reporter's sources, but because they had other ways of finding out. And I wonder if you would revisit and elaborate on that statement. Have you found it to be accurate? Is it something that's coming true, and that sort of stuff?
That was several years ago, and I think a couple of people in the room were at the same meeting I was at. What I meant by that is that the subpoena that we saw of Jim Risen, which I think was, the first one was served on him in around 2008. At that time, they also were getting far more aggressive in using electronic tools, as we all know, and as Jim himself disclosed. But they're now using electronic data to sort of do matrices on journalists, and they're able to, you know, in simple terms, get your airplane tickets, get your phone records, get your credit card receipts, and those are not a subpoena on you, the reporter. They're not doing as much of a, hey, I want you on the witness stand to tell me what you saw. That's not to say it's never going to happen again, but what they're doing is they're gathering information, they're identifying who would have been a likely person to have gotten that, and then they're trying to just survey the universe of all this electronic data and figure out who your sources likely would have been.
Church committee hearings, there was going to be a hearing on assassinations, and Senator Baker had urged that the official testimony be taken in open session. But Senator Church said, no, we're not going to do that. Could you talk about that episode and what it tells us about secrecy? Again, did Senator Church succumb to the seduction of secrecy, or was it a prudent tactical move on his part?
I knew about it. I was involved in it. I ended up agreeing with Senator Church. Of course, it was very much against my personal interest, because he told me 10 minutes before our first witness that I would always lead off questioning of any witness. Why don't we? And of course, that would have been, these would have been incredibly dramatic hearings with emotional testimony from the family members of Eisenhower and Kennedy, from cabinet secretaries, from very, very interesting and important people and heads of the CIA. But while a close call, I think he made the right judgment, because in an open hearing, you're going to have a hard time being careful to draw the distinctions between those things which should remain secret and those things which should not be secret. Even the people. I mean, for example, we made high-level government officials, we used their names. The government took ridiculous positions, like the member of the mafia who was hired by the CIA. We shouldn't be able to use that person's name, or a high level, the chief scientist of the CIA who devised poisons in the toothpaste tubes of Lumumba and so forth.
Gottlieb.
Gottlieb, that was his real name, yeah.